for staying with us. A few days ago, Governor Nasiru El-Rufai, Governor Charles Shiludo, and former CBN Governor Lamido Sanusi insisted on the fuel subsidy removal and saying it has negatively impacted Nigeria's economy. Of course, some of their comments you saw in the slides that we opened with. So this morning, let's take a look at this conversation again as we anticipate what the next administration will do in that regard. Every presidential candidate, contender in the build-up to the 2023 election said the fuel subsidy is a goner. What are the pros, cons, implications, complications? Let's have some conversation this morning with Joe Wakwe, who is a petroleum engineer. He is a partner, Zera Advisory and Consulting, former chairman, Society of Petroleum Engineers, Nigerian Council. He is also a former SA to the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum. He joins us virtually this morning. Thank you, Mr. Wakwe, for joining us this morning. Well, there are those who will be wondering, okay, we've been talking about this for eons. I'm wondering, for how long are we going to talk about this before we actually do something about it? It led to an unrest of sorts in 2012, and even before that, it was a significant issue. 2012 to now, that's 13 years. What exactly are we up against, and why is it so difficult?
Well, good morning, and good morning to the viewers. Sadly, we just keep talking about it, and the reason it's difficult is that it's become not just an economic or policy decision, it's actually political as well. So it's made it very difficult for regime after regime to act in the proper way. So I think the issues. Given up the peculiar nature of the industry, the issues have kind of dragged for so long, and I remember some years back somebody said, "Well, we're going to have to do it someday." We kept kicking the can down the road, but I think we've come to the end somehow because there are several components to this. One is, are we doing the right thing? So if the answer is yes or no, we'll debate that, we'll argue about it. But when it comes to can we sustain it in the long run, I think we've come to the point where it is no longer sustainable. So, and something has to happen.
Is there a template in the world, Mr. Wakwe? I mean, from the levels at which you have operated, we'll probably be able to tell whether there is such a template anywhere in the world of subsidy on petroleum or products for citizens of any particular country, how it is managed, and how it seems. On the one hand, there are people calling it a scam. On the other hand, there are people who are saying it is there, but it is milking us dry. Exactly what is the position from what you can see?
Well, globally, a lot of countries have subsidies on petroleum products. So Nigeria was not a unique case. Up to tomorrow, the Saudis don't pay competitive price for petroleum. A few countries have migrated from a subsidy regime to a market-driven pricing regime. I mean, Ghana right here has gone through that pain in the not too distant past. So it's, and Mexico, a few other countries have transitioned. So it's not, it has to do with the ability of the state to pay. That's one, and whether or not it is the right way to allocate resources. So you have to, it is very contextual. So every situation is unique in very many ways. So I think that when people make the comparison that, for instance, the Gulf states have subsidies and they would like to keep it here, you have to ask them, what are the resources available to sustain it? The Gulf states are oil-rich states. Nigeria is not an oil-rich state by any stretch. So we really need to make apples for apples comparison as far as this goes.
Just 1 second. You said Nigeria is not an oil-rich state. What do you mean by that?
Well, Nigeria is not an oil state. Okay, so let's look at the numbers. We produce on a good day. I mean, a couple of years ago, we do maybe 2.2, 2.3 million barrels of oil for 200 million people. So you can look at the production per capita. Take that compared to Saudi, 10 million barrels for far less than 30 million people. So you can see that you have to look at, okay, if we were to share this production per head, how many barrels will you end up with? And how many barrels will I end up with? So that's how you want to look at it. I think on this platform, I had said some years back that if you look at what we spent per head, you look at our budget in the last 10 years, we spend less than 150 cents per head per year. So that's poverty. You can't look at that and say you're oil rich. We're not rich by any stretch. So I think that the comparison we make with the Gulf states that are oil rich is not appropriate.
You asked a very important question just moments ago. You said, can we sustain fuel subsidy in the long run? And I just want us to begin to look at the implications of our inability to sustain it, or rather the inability of the incoming government to remove subsidy. What would you consider to be the long-term implications? Because already the federal government is borrowing to fund subsidy, and there's another borrowing that may have been secured, as an alternative to the removal of subsidy. So there is borrowing on borrowing. So what are the long-term implications of the lack of political will to eventually remove subsidy?
That's a very good point you made. So let's look at last year. The total federal government FGR revenues were approximately 7 trillion. I understand we spent 6-point-something trillion on subsidies. So technically, whatever the government earned was spent on subsidies. Now, you haven't talked about debt servicing. You haven't talked about running the government itself. So the implication is that we had to borrow the difference. So whether it was 12 trillion we spent last year, that difference, 5 trillion thereabout, was borrowed. And it means you have to keep servicing it year after year. It means that we are piling up liabilities for the generation that is coming behind us. That's what that will mean. To what extent can we continue to do that? I think we are coming to the end of the road as well. If we continue on this path, at some point, not too far from now, it will even be difficult to raise debt for the country. I think we are running into the wire, if you ask me. So I think we have to make a call at some point and say, okay, what exactly is this intended to accomplish? I am not sure. And I say this all the time. There's nothing wrong with subsidies. Okay? Subsidies are not bad in themselves. However, every subsidy regime has to be properly designed, targeted, and the outcome needs to be very well established and measured. So I don't know what went into this, how we ended up here. It's historical, I imagine, but we need to look at it again. And if we decide as a nation to subsidize, but maybe a different model will be appropriate. What we've done in the last couple of years just doesn't work. There are a couple of issues that people raise about this, and one is that nobody understands what went into the design. What are we trying to accomplish? Like I said, subsidies are good as far as they are designed to accomplish an economic objective. So people say, oh, you subsidize productive activities, not consumption. So we need to go back to the basics. Is it transparent enough? So even if we decided to subsidize petrol, is the model we have used transparent enough? Does the average man on the street have confidence in that to deliver on the objectives, whatever that may be? So, and then of course, in the long run, is it sustainable? So these are all criteria you have to look at. I think that what we have today, we inherited it. I'm not sure, and I haven't seen anything that says that it was properly designed. And I don't even know what it is intended to accomplish. So we need to go back to the basis and say, okay, if this is the case, what do we want to achieve with this? And should we go this route, or should we just simply exit? And I think if you look at the law of the land today, which is the Petroleum Industry Act, Section 205, clearly says that we need to migrate to a market-driven model, a very competitive market for pricing of petroleum products. So essentially, the subsidy regime is, if you ask me, is illegal as far as the
Indeed, the law is clear on it. But then again, let's begin to look at the body language of the outgoing administrations, such that perhaps we can glean something from it and speak of what is to come. You know, in a few months back, the Minister of Finance said that you know, it's realistic to begin to remove subsidy from about April. You know, gradual removal of subsidy, such that you don't do it in one fell swoop. And then some weeks back, government says again that you know, the subsidy has been suspended, but that has been clarified to mean that, you know, they're expanding the committee. Is this, you know, significant of what is to come? What does this tell you about the decision that the incoming administration will take as far as the removal of subsidy?
Okay, I think what it tells me is this. It tells me that nobody is doing the work that needs to be done. If we need to exit subsidy, it's not a light switch. You don't just wake up and put it off, right? There's work. There's pre-work. There are things that has to happen. So it's a journey, like I will imagine. So if we keep talking about, oh, we will remove it and we'll put a date, right? My sense is that there are three key issues that needs to be done before you can say, oh, we've exited the regime. One is you need to diversify supply. Right now, we have a single supplier in the market. That you cannot exit subsidies if that's the case, because that would mean that you don't have a liberalized market. You don't have a competitive market. One supplier. Okay, so that has to happen. So we need to bring in as many players as possible into that space. Currently, they are all retailing. They are all taking products from NNPC and retail. So we need to get them into the supply side. That's one. Two, we need to think about stakeholder management. We need to bring in all the critical stakeholders and, you know, put a plan together, get them to buy into it. That I haven't seen happen, right? So we must all pull in the same direction. You know, this will fail, and I'm very worried about something. It seems like the government, everything I've had, they are being driven by the lack of sustainability. So policy cannot be driven by poverty. We are reacting, right? We are basically saying, oh, we need to get up because we can't pay.
Mr. Okwe, to ask that question in a simpler form, do you think the incoming administration will have the political will, the courage to take the tough decision of removing fuel subsidy?
I hope so. I will say that I hope so. And there are two times that a government should do this. One is when oil price is low, which is maybe $40. If you're below $40, essentially at current price, there's no subsidy. So that's one time to take that decision. The other one is when you have a new government in place that has goodwill, political goodwill, and people trust, then you can take that decision. So those are the two times I think you can do it with minimal pain. But, you know, I hope they will be able to do it.
You talked about the liabilities that that government will be leaving behind if it's unable to summon the courage to remove subsidy, which brings me to the next point. What options are there available to Labour? What agenda should Labour be pushing for, you know, for the incoming administration on this thorny fuel subsidy matter?
Yes, I think Labour, they are Nigerians, right? So we are all Nigerians. So I will expect that they will sit down, government, and you know, fashion out a program that will not just say, oh, we're taking this away, but, you know, there has to be some social intervention, palliatives, if you will, whatever you call it. I hope it will be cash-based. I hope it will be things that will actually impact the targeted poor man, in quotes, you know. So I hope they will engage. My expectation is that Labour will engage and raise their issues and not, grandstanding doesn't help. We are in a very bad place now. I think every well-meaning Nigerian, whether in Labour or out of Labour, needs to sit down and work out a plan with government. That's the work I keep saying that hasn't been done. That needs to happen. So announcing dates, we're going to exist on these dates, and it's unhelpful. I think we need to sit down and work out a plan that every stakeholder will buy into, so that we do not have a failed deregulation program. Okay, I am very worried that the way we are going about it, we are being reactive, right, and spontaneous. So we need to sit back. It has to be deliberate. It has to be pre-planned. You need to get stakeholder buy-in and engagement before we finally hit raise the tape. I think it's important that we do that.
Well, Mr. Wakwe, the largest stakeholders are Nigerians. The 200 million less the critical stakeholders, the oil workers, the civil servants, and the Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources and all. Those are the critical stakeholders. And as you said, engagement. I think perhaps that's the number one challenge here. What Nigerians have been told over time, at some point we were told subsidy is gone forever, and next thing we hear subsidy is back, and then that's on the one hand. The other hand is Nigerians are saying, look, you want to remove fuel subsidy? That's fine. You talked about minimal pain. One of the ways in which this pain will be minimal is for the refineries to work. I don't know how many times I've heard turnaround maintenance since 1999. I don't think the thing has turned anywhere at all. I mean, that's just me talking. So what should we be telling Nigerians that will persuade them enough to say, this is the way to go, let's bite the bullet once and for all, feel the pain, know how long it'll last, and then we can sing Uhuru not too long from now? What should we be telling the people?
Okay, yeah, like I said, I think if I were to advise, I would say, well, put together a plan, bring in all the critical stakeholders, walk them through the plan, get their buy-in, and then you can go public and say, well, this is what we have. It's going to be this way, that way, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to do A, B, C, D within these time frames. Nigerians are here. We own the country, so everybody should. There has to be some pain. And the good news, though, is that I hear 22nd, Dangote refinery will be commissioned. So it means that in not too distant from, we will start having locally refined products in the market. So that's very good. I understand the progress Port Harcourt rehabilitation, and hopefully before the year runs out, I hear we might start producing from there as well. So those will all come in to help mitigate minimize the pain, if I may use that word. But let's be clear on what domestic refining does not take away completely the pain. So even if you were 100% self-sufficient, if you're going to pull the plug, there will be price increases. I mean, that's the reality. So there will be some pain, but it will certainly help that the bulk of our consumption is produced locally. It will certainly help.
Well,
so that's what I would say. But again, what I should tell Nigerians is, bring all the facts, put it all on the table. Nigerians are reasonable people. I think they will see through it and understand why this has to happen.
Well, the palliatives you hinted at right now is perhaps what informed the proposed $800 million World Bank loan that this administration is asking for, which of course cannot be completed until this administration exits and the next one inherits it and all of that. So what's your take on that proposition for an $800 million palliative loan that will, as some people have said, only increase the debt burden that is, according to the Debt Management Office, is already overstretched? So, palliatives, $800 million World Bank loan for 50 million, beg your pardon, 50 million Nigerians, 5,000 every day for 6 months. What's your take?
Well, if I tell you I understand what that is, I'll be lying to you. I do not see how borrowing more money helps. Neither do I think that the state has the capacity to intervene in that manner. We've had series of interventions where the state directly give conditional cash transfer schemes and all that. Personally, I don't think that we're in a place where we can. I don't trust that the Nigerian state can deliver on those. So when we come up with stuff like that, I'm a bit wary. I think that I won't borrow at this point. Personally, if I was making the call, I really don't see until you have a plan. I don't know what it's the plan that will determine what you do next. So if we don't have a plan,
can the plan include taking a loan? Do you think it's reasonable for the plan to include taking a loan?
It would, yes, it will depend on what you're trying to do. For instance, if you sit down and they say, oh, we need Mambila done, because part of the challenge you have is energy supply, right? Energy supply includes electricity, it includes fuels, okay? If, for instance, you say, oh, I want to roll out auto gas, and we don't have the resources, and you say you're going to borrow to roll out auto gas to minimize the pain that this location, then I can understand it. Okay? If you say, yo, I'm going to invest it to make sure that in 2-3 years, Mambila will start producing 3,000 megawatts or whatever it is, I will understand it. If that is part of what has been agreed to enable this transition to happen. But I wouldn't support anything that says, oh, I'm going to borrow money to share, because I just don't trust the Nigerian state to be able to share anything.
So how will Nigerians trust the Nigerian state, whatever plan they come up with? Because as you know, you've been in government before, whatever plan it is, it will cost money. Why should Nigerians trust any plan that will come from government they have not trusted for decades?
Yeah, and that's a valid point. So there is a place for building trust, right? It's something that has to happen. I mean, why have a leadership that you don't trust? So these are issues that I'm not sure. It's just that we are pressed for time. I'm not sure what the trajectory will be. But I think that if government comes out and says, okay, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and people see that they are very serious about doing it. I mean, we've gone through that route before. People will come around eventually to the idea that yes, we need to do this, not just for ourselves, but for the future of our country and generation yet to come. We cannot continue. I mean, I don't imagine that it's a responsible thing for this generation to rack up 77 trillion in debt and hope that our children will be happy with us.
Well, talk about inheritance assets, and possibly sometimes some liabilities, and unfortunately that's what this seems to be looking like. Mr. John Wakwe, thank you so much for your time this morning. As a petroleum engineer, partner, Zera Advisory and Consulting, former chairman, Society of Petroleum Engineers, Nigerian Council, and former SA to the Minister of State for Petroleum in Lagos. Thank you again for your time, and thank you so much. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Okay. Well, we're talking about building trust. A whole new set of governors coming on board from May 29. Agenda, what to do, what to expect, that and a little more when we return after this break.